Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the committee meeting of the Alice Park Trust. This is a subcommittee, and I welcome everybody. My name is Councillor Rob Appleyard. I'm the chair of the subcommittee. I would now like to call out the names of the other members and ask them to confirm that they are present. Councillor Paul Myers.
Present.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Joanna Wright.
Present.
And our independent member, Graham Page.
Present.
Thank you, Graham. Apologies for absences and substitutions. There are none. Declarations of interest. I ask if there's any details or any disclosable interest together with the nature of such interest. Are there any from the members? No, I'm not seeing any indication. Thank you very much. To announce any urgent business agreed by the chairman. There are no urgent, nothing came through, did it, Marie?
No, not that I'm aware of.
No, okay, lovely. Okay, some questions of the public have been received from a couple of residents, Janet Martin and Derek Swift. These have been circulated to the members of the subcommittee and are available to view on the council's website. A response will be prepared and sent within 5 working days of this meeting. So thank you very much for Janet and for Derek for taking an interest in the workings of the subcommittee. The next item is the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 30th of September. I'll invite members that to indicate whether this is a true record. Yes. Thank you, Paul. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Graham. Okay, the next item is to come to the chair's update. I'm going to give you an update on several items, quite a number of items that are on the table at the moment. One is the skate park. As visitors to the park will know, that the bowl has actually been built in place. We are still waiting for some additional works to be finished off. Primarily the security fence that goes between the skate park and the sand pit. That we are waiting on that, and I'll have an update of that later on. There is also landscaping work that needs to be done and other cosmetic elements in there. At the moment it is fenced off, although we have unfortunately had people sort of getting in there, but by and large people respect the space and understand that it's still a work in progress. The tennis courts, there is we've now gone through the legal process of the lease with about the refurbishment of the tennis courts. I think this is correct me, Michael, is this a lease between us and the council, or us and the LTA? It's the council, isn't it?
Sure, this is a lease between the Alice Park Trust and me, and then on to the council. Because you can't have a lease with yourself. The problem is, as I understand it, because of COVID, there's been no tender for a contractor to undertake a concession contract in respect of the council's tennis courts, and this is going to be one of the packages that also accompanies that tender. So I haven't got an update on where that is at all, I'm afraid.
Okay, that's fine, but it will progress as we're able to do so. Unfortunately, COVID obviously impacts on that as well.
Yes, there is a 2-year approval from the Charity Commission, so it needs to be concluded within that 2-year period in order for that approval to still be effective. Otherwise, we'd have to go back to the Charity Commission for that.
Okay, thank you. We need to be mindful of that then. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question on that, Rob?
Yeah.
Which or to Michael, really, through you. How long has the clock got to tick? I mean, when has the agreement run out? What's the timescale that we have to adhere to?
Okay, originally it was proposed to be 12 months, but we requested, because of it arising in the middle of COVID, I think approval was initially given informally by the Church Commission in April. It was for 12 months, but we asked that to extend to 24 months. So I think we're probably 6 months into that, maybe more. So there's about 18 months at maximum for that to be concluded.
Can we get a tendering process completed in that particular time?
Unfortunately, it's because the tender is going to be run by the council, and we're just being assisted in respect of our tennis courts. I don't know when they will have the funding for that, because leisure's been hit particularly bad by COVID and the income generated.
Okay, can I ask that if there is going to be some challenges to that, that you can obviously let us know?
I'm not involved in that project.
No.
I don't know whether anyone else is, but if not, I can at least take up some questions and issues with, I think it's Mark Higgins, who's the person.
All right, well, I'm quite happy to take that as an action and speak to Mark if we feel that there is going to leave us in a difficult position. All right, okay. The next update is on the cafe lease. Okay, you'll be pleased to know that we now have a formal agreement, an agreed legal agreement with about the lease. The current leaseholder, or the old leaseholder, is now the current leaseholder. Both sides are very happy with it. The members have actually seen the contents of the lease, and I think that will put the cafe and the park in a very good position moving forward, certainly over the next sort of 6 or 7 years. And we hope and congratulate, first of all, Tony and his team at the cafe for what they've done and what they will obviously do in the future. Without doubt, they do add to the life, and I suspect there's not many parks certainly within our authority, that has such a well-supported cafe that is very much a part of the fabric of that park. So it's good news for the council. Well, obviously as trustees, it's good news for the subcommittee, and certainly good news for the residents and the cafe. So thank you very much, and that will actually help us in one of the items I'm going to give you an update on in a minute. Community gardens. We've had a request to where just outside the entrance to the community gardens, it's looking a bit tired just through time. They've managed to secure some funding from the co-op to just put some better perimeter, little hedging and a small gate in and around where the wooden structure is, and I'm proposing to the committee that is a good move, good piece of work, because it will tidy that up and it will make the wooden structure much more usable for maybe some commercial activity for the community gardens. And if the committee is mindful that that's an okay thing to do, the trust would also benefit, because we will receive a small income from the use of that wooden structure.
2 points,
right.
Rob. One, thanks to the community garden, the park generally have a very good use of the gazebo, because when it rains, people can do their fitness classes and generally congregate under it. But I am very aware that it is the community gardens, and I'm just wondering, I saw somebody up regarding this, and it seems to me that the gates are going to be moved and hedging and fencing put round. Will that mean that the gazebo is not any longer available to the park users at large? And as that's quite close to the cottage number 2, had the owners of cottage number 2 been consulted about that? Because it's likely or possible, to have an impact on them?
Answer your last question first. Yes, I believe they have been spoken to, and I actually believe that the residents of cottage number 2 are participants of the life of the community garden in some way, so they are connected to the community garden. The hedging is very low level. It's literally sort of like step over type hedging. I think it's more because they want to open up the main gate. It's more really to stop dogs going in there. I suspect more than anything else. But visually, it will actually not be intrusive. In terms of other people using it, they can consult with the community garden people whether they want to use it. But in the name, it's a community space. Okay. Sorry, Paul.
Sorry, Rob. Paul Pierce from the Parks Department. Can we also find out a bit more about the future management of the landscaping that's going to be done? We're talking about a new hedge going in, and it's not clear who's going to maintain that.
As I understand it, Paul, I think there is there certainly is an intended discussion with the parks to ensure that the space on the outside of the hedging is adequate for any machinery, and the work that the Parks Department do in that area is being looked to be maintained, but they will obviously put any hedging in there so you can accommodate your equipment.
Okay, and the hedge will be maintained?
I'll raise that with the community garden to just back that off with you.
Yes, please, that'd be good. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, no problem. The next update is appointment of an independent member. We put out to advert for a new independent member to fill in the vacancy. We've had several applications, and we are going to do a Zoom interview of the relevant applicants, and hopefully by the next meeting we should have a new member on board, and that will be an independent non-voting member to join us, and obviously to work with Graham as well. The next one is the 10-year plan. Much has been spoken about the support that the council, as they are the trustees, that give to the Alice Park, and as our accounts show, that each year they award us a grant. Obviously, the council has their challenges, like every other council, in terms of its finances, and one of the areas that they want to look at is to see how the Alice Park, can become a little bit more self-sufficient and reduce the amount of grant that the council awards it. And with that in mind, it will be good if we now work towards a 10-year plan, that over the course of that 10 years, we look to increase any revenue opportunities for the park, and so in doing so would reduce the amount of grant that's needed. Now, the awarding of a new cafe lease goes obviously some ways to bridging that gap, because we've moved the rent to a slightly better position than what it was before, and over the summer, using the adopted tariffs that the committee took on board some while ago, we adopted the rate card that the council used for activity in the park. I have been talking to commercial users of the park. Now, these are people that use the park where basically coin exchanges hands for services. And what I've attempted to do, and it's been quite successful, is to liaise with these users understand what they're offering, and if they are charging the public for their services, we've arrived at a position where they make a small contribution to the trust for the use of the park, and that goes towards the upkeep of the park. And I think over the summer, and bearing in mind we started from zero, I think we've got about sort of £1,800 that have actually come into the kitty. There is some more out there that's due to come in, but the whole ethos of it was not to be seen as just, well, you're using the facilities, we're going to just make you a blanket charge. We looked at individual cases, and so it's fair, and we looked at opportunities that they could either have a termed license for maybe a month or 6 months or even a year, and so they could then use the park as much as they like within that time, and have it so it didn't become a horrible part of their experience in Alice Park. And pretty much every user has responded very positively in that. And so the idea is cementing the fact that if you want to use the park on a commercial basis, you can make a small contribution to the upkeep of the park. Now, if people want to get together as a mum's group and they just want to go there and they want to do a bit of keep fit or something like that, that doesn't come into it. They just do that as a normal community use. Anybody who's doing it where they're exchanging coin and it's a commercial business of some sort, we would obviously enter into an agreement with them. So hopefully that will progress, and as I said, it will have a positive income effect on our income, and work us towards some way of actually getting to maybe year 7 or 8, where we're actually more self-sufficient and we're not relying on the council to subsidise us in any way.
Can I make a couple of points on that, Reb?
Yeah, of
Rob?
course you can, Graham.
I think what you've done is absolutely brilliant. I'm just a little bit worried about the equity of it, that some people who are paying on this are sort of commenting that, well, other commercial activities are coming into the park and are not being swept up, as it were. Companies that do dog walking for commercial gain and are using the park for dog walking, been one that has been highlighted to me as sort of avoiding the net. The other thing is that I just think it needs a bit of tidying up round the edges in terms of sort of insurance and public liability of those commercial activities towards other park users in general. And I wondered if, in fact, you've got any thoughts on how that might be achieved.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, first of all, there are people that still use the park and on a commercial basis that haven't contributed, and we obviously need to mop them up, and that takes time. Also, first of all we've got to know that they're doing it and who's doing it. And as you said, if you're in the park every day, maybe you could be quite useful in identifying them for us. I don't particularly want to sort of go up there and demand anything. We just need to understand who it is, and then we have a process where we can make contact with these people in the right way, explain, if you like, what our vision is, and generally they respond very well. If we just went up there and just said, well, we need you to pay for using the park, we straight away we hit the barriers. So there are people that we still need to pick up and bring into that regime. In terms of the professional dog walker, yes, they possibly are doing that for fee, but if they're walking down the road and into the park, around the park and outside, there are some things that we have to be very realistic and understand that we won't be able to sort of catch them in there. But if, you know, if like, and we've got a lady there that goes to the park and she actually does dog training, and she actually pays, because I mean, she's in a designated area of the park, and she has and she contributes to the upkeep of the park. So there are slight differences, and it will never be black and white. So we have to make those judgments as we go through. And in terms of insurance, yes, we ask people if they've got their insurance, because I mean, and that's one of the reasons why we talk to people anyway, because if they're doing commercial activity in there, we possibly indicated they may not actually be covered by any liability insurance that we may have. So we need to actually understand what they're doing in there. Now that brings to two other pieces on there. One is that in an ideal world, we would like to identify or find somebody who will take on the booking process on a more permanent basis for us. And we need to give a thought of how we're going to do that. Either we ask for a volunteer, or whether we actually find somebody who will do it for a small stipend of some sort. And that's a discussion we can have certainly before we start the next year's summer's activity. Because although I've been doing it, it's not something that I find I can fit in very well. And me and paperwork is pretty rubbish, to be honest. So I want somebody with a little bit more structure, if they can do that, and it would suit somebody. It's actually a very pleasurable thing to talk to these people and understand their world. But one of the other things we need to do, it's the last update I've got on there, we are tasked with, or we've agreed to have some community engagement plan for the park. And as a committee, we've got to start thinking how we put that together, what it's actually going to mean. And so we can get more people in the community engaged with the committee, with the life of the park, and not necessarily having it just focused on us. Did you want to say something, Paul?
I know it's a discussion for another day, but I would say I really, really support the idea of having somebody to take these bookings, because I've done that sort of thing myself, and then I've got someone in who's focused on it, and it's such an ongoing job, and it's going to be there. It's only fair to make it a role, and you know, a discussion for another day. But I'd strongly advise we do look at some sort of, even if it's token, like something towards their volunteering time. It's just that it is such an important job for bringing money in, and it will actually bring benefit in as well, having that contact point.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Just to push one more item on that is, apart from that, we do have events in the park, and it seems to me that a person that fulfills Paul's role could in fact be a focus for sort of receiving applications for events for us to monitor and things like that, and give sort of a management focus to the whole of the activities that go on in the park.
You're absolutely right, and I think that will be a significant part of their role, because those events can actually put some good revenue into the park for meeting at some of our aspirations we want to do on in terms of improvements. Because if without doubt there's one area of the park that we must concentrate on next year, and that is actually the play area. We do have to really focus on that and look at ways of actually improving that quality of equipment in there, because we're possibly now, I wouldn't say the worst park in Baines, but we're possibly the worst park in Baines in terms of play area for things. Not in ethos of park, brilliant, but in terms of what the kids have got to play in there, we do let them down. And we need to move forward, and that could be part of that communication piece that we've got to do with residents. Okay, that's all I've got to say on there. Any questions come from all of that? Joe.
So what, in terms of our community engagement and our plan for the park, how are we going to take this piece of work forward from this committee meeting?
I'm quite happy for suggestions on that one. It's a bit difficult to do a connection to the community because of obviously restrictions, COVID and everything like that, because normally we would say, well, we'll arrange a meeting or a gathering or something like that. But I think between now and maybe when we can do, which may be springtime, if we're lucky, maybe we can start formulating some ideas of how we want to engage with people and what they would see. Now, I know Paul has got a wealth of experience in that area. Paul?
Well, I'm not on mute now. I wondered if we could have almost like a workshop of us people here to start with, to lay out some objectives and a scope in an informal setting, and albeit on Zoom, but we could have a PowerPoint and run it as a workshop with some notes, and then really sort of from that talk to groups and users and work out who it is we could look at and maybe bring it to our next meeting and then take it forward. But I think it would be nice just to sort of free up our minds from the formal agenda and try and have some time out to really run a workshop with us, yeah, as a basis then for going out. I'm not proposing we just decide it all in a cupboard. I think a workshop for us could work really well, and I don't mind putting some effort into, you know, working with whoever to organise that.
So who would you think best lead that piece of work, Paul?
Well, I think if we ran it as a workshop to start with, we can settle that sort of thing in the workshop, because I think it's quite hard to decide who or how to lead it when we're not quite sure. So I think it would be like, you know, working out from scratch what we want to do. And I think we could combine the community engagement and the business plan sense together about the future and how we want to work forward, but bearing in mind that those two things are sort of ultimate deliverables.
Okay, and the attendees at that workshop, I'm assuming we don't need to drag officers into that, do we?
No, not. I mean, I don't know if it's right to say this, but I think if Marie could come, I think because you sort of look after us, it would be interesting to hear and link into you in particular, but in a legal sense at this stage. And I mean, I don't know what Parks think as well, but I just think getting some of us round a table to do something, and it will be only the very start of a process.
Okay. Well, if we look at that, and we'll have a new committee member shortly as well, so that might be an opportunity. If we can sound that out to see if it's something that Marie can help us with. I mean, obviously, you know, Shane, we don't particularly need his level of expertise at the moment, and the finance side of it with Paul, we don't need at the moment, anything like this. And the other legal side with Michael, we don't need, do we? So we could actually pull that on there. And what I would suggest is that if we did that, we may want to invite somebody from Parks because they can have some experience in that arena. And if we can arrange a meeting whenever, as quick as anybody wants it, and we can just start the ball rolling on that one. Is that agreeable? Yes, Joe's nodding. Yeah. Graham's nodding.
Can I just dredge something that happened at a meeting that we were at about 18 months ago, when somebody dredged up the idea of Friends of Alice Park, just as a way of community engagement. And as I say, it just flitted across my mind that
yeah. All of those things I think will go into the mix at this meeting, and we'll explore them, because there are values to have friends ofs. Because I mean, not only are they part of the community, but also it could be fundraising, could be many areas of benefit to everybody. Paul?
Could I suggest that I've run these sort of things as a job. Although it would be nice to get it in soon, I think if it could be in the new year, psychologically, that's quite a good time to do it. If we do it before and then we all go off for Christmas, even a COVID restricted one, I don't feel we bounce back quite the same. Whereas I think a new year and getting through new year, come back in, have something in the new year, we'll be looking forward, and then we can carry it on through.
Mid-end January?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
All
if we
right.
could just avoid council week for some of us who are involved
Yes.
with all that, that would be appreciated.
Okay. Right. I think we've got a way forward on that one. Well done. Thank you very much. And thank you, Paul, for offering. I don't know if you did offer, but I think you did. But
well, I did. And if you wanted to have a chat on the phone, Rob, then I'm quite happy to have a chat just to give some ideas, to give it some shape, if that's a help.
Yeah, that'd be really helpful. Thank you very much, Paul. That'd be good. Okay, I'm going to crack on now to items 8, which is the Alice Park budget. To consider the attached report, which provides an update on the 2020-21 budget and the current year financial position, and raises considerations for the 21-22 budget. Is this something Paul's are you going to speak to this one, Paul, in any way?
I can summarise the report for you if you wish, Rob.
Yeah, would members like that, or are you happy with? Yes, Joe's nodding. Yes, Graham's nodding. Yes, please, Paul.
Okay, so partly as you just outlined, the purpose of the report is to outline planned income and expenditure for the 2021 financial year and detail expected income and costs against that plan. This in turn will further support the 10-year plan that you previously referred to. With regards to income in this financial year, tennis court income is slightly down against what was expected, but that is not to be surprised given various restrictions we've all had to bear this year. But events income is higher than budgeted, as you previously referred to earlier in the meeting. Most of the costs for the charity are fixed in nature. However, a budget or a planned spend was built in for additional grounds or park maintenance, and no additional spend has occurred, so that results in about £1,000 underspend. So what that leaves us with is it was expected that the council would need to provide a subsidy to support the deficit of approximately £24,000. Given the increased income and the reduction in expenditure, that deficit is likely to fall to closer to £21,800 for this financial year. So whilst we still have 3 months of the year to go, that is a positive position and does show that the trust is moving in the direction of becoming more commercial over time. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's pretty straightforward, pretty clear. And I think we're asked to note the report, yes? Noted. Okay, it's well and truly noted. Thank you very much. Item number 9, it's the sale of cottage number 2, Alice Park. There is an attached report, and it gives an update, and this is an update of the position that the committee accepted back in December 2016 at a previous meeting, and it does go some way to answer some of the questions that came in from some of the residents as well. You're asked to note report. Now, the reason for the report was really to pull everything together as it is and maybe deal with any future questions around that, so there is clarity of what it is and where it is. I can only ask, do we note the report? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Policies for Alice Park. This is to consider whether the trust introduce policies regarding barbecues and sky lanterns. And I think, Graham, did you wanted to say something about this?
Yeah, I just feel that it's in the sort of gift of the trustees to, in fact, decide both times when the park can be made available and also the conditions under which it can be made available. And really my concern is that various groups of park users live harmoniously with one another. And there are certain things that happen in the park where there are potential areas of conflict. To give a couple of 3 examples, the introduction of electrically propelled play vehicles into the park area, go-karts, electric scooters and things like that. They do travel at quite considerable speed.
You want to stick to barbecues and sky lanterns?
Well, that's one thing. Sky lanterns are another thing. Drones are another thing. There was quite a nasty incident with somebody flying a drone and the drone flying into a young person and potential sort of aggravation between the parents of the child who was flying the drone and the child that was hit by the drone. The thing about the air balloons and things, there are a number of things like that where if in the context of Paul's meeting that we could sit down and think that what these potential flashpoints are likely to be and just set up a set of rules and regulations as to the conduct in the park, just to make sure that in fact the people in the park live harmoniously with one another. I mean, if we could get a situation where we could have barbecues safely, then we go for it. But at the moment we're not in that situation, and we need to, we just need to make sure that children in particular, because they're thoughtless beings, can play in the park with a degree of safety.
Thank you, Graham. I mean, on that, Paul, I think you wanted to come in.
When you say Paul, there's 2 of us called Paul, isn't there? Is that right? No, maybe not.
Paul, are you talking about Paul, the committee member, Paul, Graham?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Please don't think I'm being picky, but I just think because of equalities, I know it was a fun statement, but we just need to not call children thoughtless beings. Please don't think I'm being picky. But
no, I know, but
please don't think I'm looking at you. But
no, they're just sometimes inconsequential, and as children are.
I think I rather suspect from my experience of life, and please forgive me, Chair, but I think all people have that ability, whatever age. And please don't think I'm being politically correct out of order, but I just think because
not really. I think you were.
The point is taken.
I think you were at the front of the queue just to raise that point, but okay, yeah. I mean, I think you do raise some interesting questions, particularly about the barbecues. And I know the sky lanterns went through a phase where I think, and Paul may know, one of our ex-colleagues down in Westfield had an experience with a sky lantern that fell onto one of his hedges and burnt it down. So I mean, so we are aware that they are a problem. Now we can go one or 2 ways on here. I mean, we can adopt the Baines policy on barbecues in the park, or we can maybe put this as part of that discussion on that wider community piece that we're going to do next year, and just wrap up, because we don't want to maybe not have people enjoy themselves at the park, and maybe a barbecue might be handy. And I do know that Baines, in some of their parks, they have specific trestle tables with a barbecue section on the end of it, and quite nearby they have a bin which will take hot ashes, because those are the things we need to think of. So if we are going to accommodate it and we can keep it in a particular area. So maybe that's something we can discuss later on. But I do think it is a discussion that we need to have within that. Joe?
Yes, I fully support Paul Meyer's approach that everybody throughout their lives can say and do the wrong thing, whatever their age. To follow up on rules and regulations, I just wonder what the rules and regulations are generally in Baines parks, and maybe that is the simple way forward, so that there is just a standard throughout all parks, even though we are run as a different model, that maybe that's what we should do, because then that's a clear way for all residents to understand the way forward.
Or maybe we can ask Paul from Parks to clarify.
Yeah, so just on the matter of barbecues, yeah, barbecues aren't allowed unless there are facilities that allow them to be used safely. So there are a couple of parks, as you said, where people can have barbecues safely because we've got disposal facilities, but in other places, barbecues are prohibited. I'm not sure about sky lanterns. I thought they were kind of prohibited anyway. We've never had problems with, certainly in recent years, with people using sky lanterns. And drones, yeah, similarly, drones aren't allowed without the landowner's permission, and we don't grant that permission because of the general risks around privacy and the potential for accidents. So in general, drones are prohibited in parks with some rare exceptions. So yeah, I think in general it would be good to adopt standard Baines, if you like, rules and regs for using parks safely and responsibly. And that way then when the public go from one park to another, they know what the rules are. So yeah, that would be sensible. Happy to share, you know, the rules and the guidance with you, if that would help.
I think Michael.
I just want to ask Paul whether or not there are any enforcement of those rules and regulations in respect of council parks, because it's one thing having rules and regs, it's the other enforcing them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess where we can, the only means that we realistically have for enforcing them is if a public nuisance is being caused, and it can then become a police matter. So in reality, that's pretty rare. Yeah, it's a good point around enforcement. Yeah, it's. There's also the logistics of having somebody on site that is able to enforce them. I guess what you can do if you've got the rules very clearly displayed is that members of the public can point to those rules and kind of appeal to people's better natures. So it's useful to have those guidelines in place, but yeah, enforcing them can be more tricky. You need a resource there to do it.
Okay, can I suggest if we could have a copy of those around the barbecues, the drones, and then we can put them on the agenda for next meeting to adopt, if that's what the committee feels that is a good safety net, and then obviously we will carry on with the discussions about the range of policies about the behaviours in the park. But you know, we don't want to be obviously too draconian about how people behave in the park. We've got to have that element of freedom and everything like this. But we just got to get that balance that that some person's enjoyment or activity is not causing distress to other park users, and it's always a fine balance. And I think Paul is absolutely right from the parks, and it was a good point that Michael raised, that enforcement. And it's not only in the park, but anything we do in this day and age, enforcement is actually so difficult because there's never the resources to actually do it. But having it something that other members of the park can actually refer to and point to, you know, it's got to be good. And we have got some new signposts or signboards going up in the park shortly anyway, so we can maybe get something in there tastefully done.
Can I just ask Michael, through you, Chair? What bothers me is in the absence of any sort of rules of any sort, if anything happens, whether the liability actually then falls back on the trust. Somebody arguing, well, you know, nobody, on the basis that nobody told me. Whereas if in fact we have some sort of code, at least we can say that in fact the trust have thought about this, and in fact and are directing people in the right direction.
I think my advice would be, it would be sensible to have rules, because as Paul from the Parks Department has said, other members of the public can point to them to try and enforce them. I think the problem with having rules is that if you don't enforce them and the child is injured, then they've got two people to sue: the person who caused the injury and potentially the owner of the land on which it took effect. And because we're a large organisation and we're insured, they're always going to come after the council. Now, I understand, I appreciate your a committee of the council, but ultimately it could be that the council is a defendant, as you know, the people through the sole corporate trusteeship is delivered. So I think it's useful to have them there. I just don't think there's an easy answer to this. There's no panacea. If we don't then enforce them, you know, it's not really having a defence to point to some rules that you might have. But equally, I think there was a case in Cheshire where somebody dived into a lake run by the council and injured themselves, and the courts accepted that, you know, the councils couldn't police every leisure environment. So I think on balance, I would have the rules, but ultimately, you know, it doesn't prevent someone suing you.
All right. Okay, that's actually quite gives you a bit of a conundrum, really, doesn't it? But I think we will possibly, I would suggest to the committee that we actually follow the path of having rules and guidance in there, because that does clear expectations of how we would like the park to be used and the people behaving within it. All right. Okay. Thank you for that. Item 11 is the memorial tree and benches, and it's discuss whether the trust should introduce a policy regarding memorial trees and benches in the park. I think we do. Well, first of all, we do actually have memorial trees in the park, parks with various plaques on there. I think we've got something for the suffragettes and for various things, and we've obviously got dedications to the McVicar family who actually bequeathed the park to the community and everything like this. And so we accept that principle, I suppose. Benches is a slightly different one, because lots of people would like to recognise maybe a loved one that's no longer with us in some way, especially if they use the park every day. And it always then comes down to sort of, can they have a bench there, and how much does a bench cost, and then there's the cost of that and everything like this, and where do you put them? Or there's an alternative that we actually have a bench where we can have multiple little plaques on there that can actually satisfy that desire for somebody to recognise a loved one. Is there a discussion on this anybody would like to have?
Just 2 points, Chair. I mean, one, I've had somebody come up to me in the park who wants to actually donate a bench, and is quite prepared to pay for it. It's on the basis that they just have a plaque to their loved one. Now, I suppose belatedly, I have to declare an interest, because in fact my wife has in fact expressed something of the same wish, that in fact when she dies, she would, because she's likes Alice Park, that she would like to donate a bench to Alice Park, but again with the codicil that in fact that it's in memory of her. And it could, in fact, to a certain extent, be a bit of a revenue raiser, being a bit mercenary about it. But the other thing is, it would improve the benches in the park, some of them which do need renovating.
Okay, Paul.
I think it's very good. I think some care has to be noted about. There's a cost of donation, in a sense, long term for maintenance, and just being clear that this doesn't then put on the charity a definite obligation to maintain and then replace in perpetuity the bench, and then put the plaque on another bench and another bench forever. And I know it may sound being a bit picky, but we do need to be mindful about what we actually offer people with regard to the long term. Yeah. And also, like, if it was vandalized or destroyed, or it just crumbles away, even with some maintenance, we need to be clear on what our policy is on that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Yeah, and I do know when people have benches, certainly through the council, it's just not the cost of the bench. It's like a maintenance program that follows, and sometimes that could move the overall cost to be quite a lot. Paul, did you have a comment on that? Paul from Parks?
Yeah, just a bit of advice from our end, really. In Baines, we have two different approaches, really, to bench sponsorship. A different approach up at Haycombe Cemetery, where people sponsor a bench and they're then responsible for the maintenance themselves. And I don't know quite how that works in detail, but in the Parks team, people in the Parks department, people can sponsor benches for a 10-year period. We've seen in the past where benches have sort of been, benches have been adopted in almost in perpetuity, and then you're left with having to replace benches consistently. So you can look at a 10-year kind of sponsorship period, but for benches and for trees, bear in mind that you're going to need people to manage these systems. You're going to need people to keep these records. Particularly with trees, trees obviously can live for a really long time, and we've had cases where trees are trees have been in for 40 years. We've then had to fell the trees, and the relatives have come back and said, we planted a tree there 40 years ago and paid the council 2 and 6pence, and why have you cut the tree down? So it's just thinking about having systems in place for ensuring the maintenance, but also for having those records. Just kind of words of caution, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Any other comments, Joe?
I certainly know with tree planting that, I think Alice Park is probably quite well planted, if you know what I mean. And we are looking now as an authority to be planting more trees elsewhere. So it's not that I would discourage people from doing something in Alice Park, but I think that there will be other opportunities across the authority in the next few weeks and even years to do that in a better way. So although I welcome that people would want to be remembered in some kind of a way, I agree with Paul Pierce and Parks that we might not be in a best place at the moment to deliver this for people. And maybe if they want to make some kind of contribution to the park, that actually they make some kind of donation that could then be used in, for example, improving the play area for small children to play in, rather than it just be a thing that somebody else has an agenda for.
Yeah. So so there's several different takes on all of that, really. I certainly pick up on the point about that longevity or the end game. You do a memorial. How long does that last? I know memorial was forever in people's mind, but the actual structure, if it's a bench, or do you actually have a memorial bench which you can put a number of little plaques on, and then people would just supply the plaque and have it connected on there? And in a way, we could actually do that at no cost to the park. And maybe if that is in memory of somebody who's used the park for many years, it's our gift to them that we don't charge them for it if we've already got the bench there. So I don't know how does the committee want to sort of just wrap this one up? Paul M.
Given that we've got a workshop coming up, and this is sort of a bit like a policy, could we tie it in with that? Because I think it fits in with our long-term plan and our aspiration. Because I'd also like to look at, you know, to be clear about what our style is of seating over time. And, you know, I don't know whether everybody's only into wood, but, you know, there's using recycled materials and things a bit like that, you know, and there's an awful lot to this that perhaps even if we agreed it was just a project in the plan, we could consider it in the whole before we drill down into too much detail.
Okay, I think Joe's in agreement with that, and I think are you nodding? Yes, Graham's nodding. Yes, yeah. Okay, we'll move that forward and we'll stick it in that pot, and we can have a chat about that. Thank you very much. Good suggestion. Just want to jump over to item 13 before 12, because I think 12 will be a little bit longer than 13. And we had a request for a multi-games wall for Alice Park, and it literally is that. It's a wall with a bit of standing in front of it that people can practice a whole range of things, between kicking a football, hitting a tennis ball, bowling a cricket ball at, and things like that, which just adds an element to the park and everything like this. Now, I think obviously COVID has affected the intended timeline for this, and I just really want to. I think it's going to be a reaffirmation from the committee that this is still something that the committee are happy to move forward. Now, the stipulation from our point is that we haven't got the money to do that, so it has to be a funded piece of work that we can supply the space. And then possibly the funding, and then that would also have an element of ongoing maintenance within that. Is the committee still happy for this?
I'm happy for it to be explored, but I just wonder about an impact analysis. What effect the introduction of something like this will have on the existing uses of the park? Because obviously, if you're talking about a wall with, you know, that you can play tennis against, or football or cricket against, then it not only involves the flat planing of the wall itself, but it involves an area back and forth in front of it. And again, there's a question of interaction between various forms of users. I mean, do we put this area within a protected space? Do we leave it open to the rest? I think there's some, apart from the principle of it, I think there are some logistical issues that in fact we'd need to consider very, very carefully.
How do you fancy sort of exploring that then, Graham, and just putting together some ideas and some challenges about how that can be taken forward, and what the considerations are that we need for it?
Basically, it's a SWOT analysis, really. You know, the strengths of it.
All right.
Yep. Okay. I'll do that.
Okay. I'll leave that with you to sort of come back, and then we can come back, and maybe you might have something that'll come back into the January meeting.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Lovely. Survey of Alice Park. Now, Graham, I think some while ago you did a survey of the park, and you obviously found some issues or some challenges that you may want us to address.
Yeah, I did. I was asked to do this by the committee about 18 months ago, and I've been round just recently and updated it. there are just little bits and pieces in the park which sort of, a bit like the children's playground, make the park environment as overall as a bit tatty, I think is the word that I would like to split. It falls into areas like various aspects of the ironwork around the park, gates and things like that not fitting properly, or just come off their hinges and need replacing. So that's one issue, and various memorial plaques have been dented by careless car owners who've driven into them and things like that. So there's an issue around ironwork in the park. There's an issue around benches in the park. Some of the benches have become quite dilapidated, and one or two of them are dilapidated to the extent that they're potentially dangerous. The third area is the marking out of things. The area in the car park, for example, all the signs delineating fire exits, disabled bays and things have all become eroded and really need replacing. The little children's sort of road system, the markings could be upgraded there. There's a decision to be taken about whether in fact we still have a no cycling sign in on the pathway to the park. So that's the third issue. And there are little bits and pieces of repairs to things like the tennis hut. Jeff Ward and I had to take down the downpipe, for example, because it's dangerous. There's a rail missing to it, which is potentially dangerous because the upstands are there, but the rail isn't. There are just little bits and pieces like that, which if they were sort of just seen to, would make the park look, I suppose, loved, and that really is what it's all about. And you've got a list of, and Paul's got a list of what they are, and it just those little things attending to, really. You're on mute.
Yeah, that's right. It's a bit better. I think the points you make are very valid, and I suppose it all comes down to resources and money. And if we had that, and this is something that we've got to work towards, I think there are one or two things that I think we should see how we can move forward with them sooner than later. One of the areas that I would suggest is the entrance, the car parking area, because the markings for the car parking area are faded. People are parking in the bays for disabled parking and things like that. And if we are going to put the new signboards up, maybe that can be the start of actually looking at that front area first and see how can we collectively find a way of getting the lines refreshed. Are they marked out as we would want them for people to park? I mean, are they the way they're used, is it the best use of that space and everything like this? So I mean, would it be sensible if we said, okay, well, let's focus on the entrance to the park first, because that's where a lot of the visuals are. As you said, it's looking tired and you want it to people to enjoy it. So we do that. Things like railings, I think, they have replaced the railings where they were being dented down and everything like this. There's nothing to stop us next spring, if we wanted to, is to have bring a paintbrush party, or like on 2 or 3 Saturday mornings during the spring, where we can paint up those railings and we get the community involved in those elements of it. We can find a way of getting hold of the paint. And I think that's how we've got to start engaging and getting some of the improvements. Now, obviously, they won't be able to do the line marking unless we know somebody who does line marking and who happens to be sort of or we speak to the council and understand, is there a way that we can engage with the people that they use in such a way that we can find a mechanism that we can get our lines refreshed. don't want to go and ask them council to do that, because the transport budget is severely pressed, and everybody asks us for everything. But there are some things that we can't physically do ourselves. But if we can find a way of making that happen, I think we need to do that.
Yeah, I agree. There's only one tiny little point that I would really ask for a little bit of priority on, and that's the gate onto the London Road. It's not a big job, but it really needs just a maintenance to sort of make it close and open properly. And also, I think a self-closer on that particular gate would be a useful thing, because if people leave it open, again, look, children is sort of the big thing of my concern, and a gate sort of like that left open because it doesn't close properly.
Okay, well, we need to
just little things like that.
Yeah, we need to understand what the actual position of that gate is. I know it should be closed. In terms of whether it is are you talking about pedestrian traffic goes in and out?
Yeah, pedestrian traffic goes through it, and there's a little gate and a big gate, and they leave it open, and then
Okay. Well,
it worries me. Let's put it like that.
We can ask for that to be looked at, because that's very much a health and safety issue. If you're saying that it's left ajar, I mean, I wasn't aware of that. I thought that actually gate was pretty much a permanently closed, and only possibly council vehicles used it.
It's used sorry, Rob. It's used frequently. Frequently.
Well, we'll pick that up as a more of an urgent look, because there's definitely a health and safety issue around that gate, because of going onto the London Road. We won't want that. All right.
Thanks.
I mean, we'll find out. And I don't know if Paul from Parks knows any more about that. Do you?
Sorry, about getting the gate repaired.
Yeah, about that usage of the gate on the London Road. Do you know much about that at all? No,
I don't.
No. All right. Okay. Well, we'll take it away outside the meeting, and that.
Yeah. Okay. But that's the essence of the report.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, very useful, Graham. Thank you for your work around that. Joe?
May I suggest that Graham goes away and writes a list of all the issues that he finds in the park, and then sends that to the trustees or the voting members, so that we can then have a look and work out how best to proceed with this.
You should have my report.
Rather than it being brought to what is essentially a committee meeting. This is not exactly the right place for this, but we could take that as a piece of work to take forward.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Okay. I think in fairness to Graham, there is a validity in him raising the awareness that we have got some maintenance issues on that one. So I understand what you're saying, Joe.
I'm not denying his validity. I'm just wondering the best place for this, and it is certainly a piece of work that needs to be done. And I'm very grateful for Graham to bringing it up. It's just how we move it forward.
Okay, good point. Okay, thank you. I think right, that's right. I've just been zipped off. Bear with me. Where I am. I think that is it until we've got to agree the date of the next meeting. We've either got the 25th of January or the 27th of January, but I mean, I'm quite happy to leave it to outside of this meeting, bearing in mind what we've said about our potential what we were going to call it, engagement meeting. Yeah, so can I leave it with Marie to juggle around with our diaries and get the right sort of date element in there? Yeah?
Yeah, fine. I can look at that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Marie. Thank you very much for your support on all this, Marie. As always, you kept us where we should be, so thank you for that. Thank you for Shane from the legal team popping in to see us, and also from Paul from the Parks, and obviously Paul from Finance, and especially Michael, who keeps us on the straight and narrow. Other than that, that's all we need to do today. thank you very much for joining us, and have a, well, we won't see you beforehand, not in this environment, so have a really good Christmas.